know me. And then, well, today I'm the hostess of this part, and I know all of you, just like me. I am so thrilled because today we are going to share our work, and I would say masterpiece. Some of you did a really awesome job. But before that, I think that it's time for us, well, to enjoy the lecture. Well, I would say the class that we had in Canada. And then let's go back to that moment, and then let's enjoy the class time just in Canada. So I would like you, all of us, let's welcome our, I would say, greatest, and always feel warm, and then always have passion. And everyone, let's welcome Meena.
I miss your energy. I was so used to starting my days with that energy. Welcome to everyone here. It's such an honor for us to be here today with you all. So thank you sincerely for having us. I did walk into the room this morning and felt a bit of a nervous energy. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
Yes? So we're okay. Just letting you know we're just sharing with each other. If we return back to SFU, I used to say this word kind of like trial and error. We try, we talk, and we try again. So today is just a time for you to share, to honor what you've done, because you've done so much work. I do want to give each other a round of applause for that. And maybe before we begin, I know I have 50 minutes, so I will try to be kind of conscious of our time here. Just take a moment to take a breath in. Take a breath out. You all know my meditation that I did with you all the time. Both feet on the floor. And just take a moment to check in with the person beside you or behind you, and just share what feeling is in your mind or your body right now. So for me, I might say I feel excited, maybe a little bit of nervous, but more excited. That's how I feel right now. So maybe share it with the person beside you. How are you feeling? What's your body feeling? What's your mind feeling right now?
Well, I would say at the same time, this is really good to
Hard tapping. So a little trick. I'm going to be giving you, the presentation today, I will be giving you moments to just talk to your partners. So I would urge you to talk to maybe a different partner around you, or if you feel comfortable and you want to have the same partner all the presentation, that's fine too. But if you're ever feeling those nervous feelings coming up, and just put those 2 feet on the floor, feel your toes into the ground, you're okay. We're doing this together, okay? Thank you. So just to introduce myself to people that do not know me, first and foremost, what we're going to be doing today is kind of an overview, because in 50 minutes, would you like for me to use that? Yeah, sorry.
So, in 50 minutes, it's a bit tough to kind of go into specific detail about all the different frameworks that we learn when we're at SFU in this program. But what I wanted to do for everybody was a bit of a refresher, but also a note on the top 5, I would say, kind of frameworks, practices, or I like to say kind of ways of being for an educator when you want to educate the whole child. So today I will be exploring what is the whole child, what does that mean to educate the whole child, and also what are these practices that we can go through, okay? So before we do that, lots of tools here, so bear with me. I do want to honor that the land that we practice and work and learn on at SFU, and the land that all of you kind of spent your few weeks at, so at Simon Fraser, I'd like to read this out. We live and work on the unceded traditional territories of the Coast Salish peoples, of the Tsleil-Waututh, Squamish, Coquitlam, and Musqueam nations. And the reason we do that is just to, first of all, understand that we're working and benefiting on land that's not necessarily ours, and also just to honor kind of how and where we work. Okay? Thank you. So a little bit about myself. I'm also a K-12 teacher. More specifically, I'm a grade 8 to 12 teacher. And within any class that I'm teaching, I often have multiple grades. I work at a community school that some of you went to, Burn Creek Community School. Do you remember? Yes? Okay, we're making sure we're awake this morning. And I also work through a few programs here at Simon Fraser University as an educator as well, and as a student. So I'm currently in school as a PhD candidate. So I'm kind of going in a bit of a circle of learning all the time as teacher, student, all of that kind of engagement with what it means to be a teacher and a student. So I also want to note that I do use Twitter sometimes as a bit of a dialogue, because sometimes we're a bit shy and we kind of have a question to ask. We don't have it kind of in our mind quite yet. You're welcome to message me or use the hashtag NTNU 2019 and send out some questions, and I can kind of get to them later today, if that makes sense. So if there's something on the slide, you can kind of write that down and get back to me, and I can engage with that today. I'll be mindful to check it, okay? So the reason I kind of bring up my community school here is I think it's really connected to what it means to educate the whole child. So at Burn Creek Community, it's actually the most multicultural community in all of Canada. It has a 10% refugee population. 52% of the students at this school are non-Canadian citizens. There's over 70% of students who do not speak English at home. And there's 90 different languages being spoken in the school. So I mention this because I think it kind of reset me as an educator of what it means to not only just educate the brain of our students, but what are our students bringing into the classroom. And as many of you have shared, your students are coming from different backgrounds, different social locations, and they're bringing those selves into the classroom. And so we have to be mindful as educators that not every student is equipped and ready to go move to the head and move to academics right away. Okay? All right, so our learning goals, you might remember this, my connecting, processing, and transforming. So a lot of what's in this presentation today, I'm hoping you can kind of copy-paste it into your classrooms. So again, as a teacher in the K-12 system, this is how I plan my lesson plans. I have a connecting piece where I'm trying to understand that my students come to the classroom with banks of knowledge, just like all of you come to this room with banks of knowledge. So I want to know, what do they already know? So today, I will be connecting with you all, and this is our I statement. Should we read it together, just to wake up? I will refine my mental model of teaching and learning. Perfect. So we will be doing some reflecting today. So processing. This is a part where we give lots of new information, or a little bit, I should say, new information and knowledge. Once you know what your students already know, you can kind of go in and provide a little bit of information. For our teachers that went to SFU, this might be a little bit of a repeat, okay? But not necessarily. So let's read this one. I will explore quality teaching frameworks and practices that promote whole child education. Yeah, so my students know that this is a part of new information that they will be learning within the classroom today. So this is what we will be engaging with. And then finally, that transforming piece is when you create something new through reflection or action. So not everybody is ready for the action part. You might just be in a thinking mode today, and that's totally fine, okay? So I will commit to reflecting on or using one or more frameworks. That's a bit of a run-on sentence, but it's okay. Yes, we will be reflecting, or we will be actually taking one of these and using these next week. So that's the commitment of today's session. Is that okay? Yeah? Okay, no pressure. We can be in the reflecting stage too. Okay. So why connecting, processing, and transforming? This is just a little bit of a note. So what it calls for is a full circle learning experience. You're accessing background knowledge, there's new information being provided, and then you're actually creating something new. So every student that walks into your classroom, they know that they're responsible for going back and looking at what they already know, learning a little bit more, and then actually doing something with it, okay? So that framework always keeps me accountable as an educator as well. Am I going through all of these steps? Or am I spending too much time in processing? Or am I expecting my students to transform? Or am I not giving them enough responsibility and we're stuck in connecting? Okay? So again, there's multiple lessons that you can be doing within these 3 sections. Sometimes I spend 3 lessons on connecting. Sometimes it depends on what you're teaching, right? So again, this is a guiding structure to lesson planning. Just a little bit of information that I'm trying to understand what my students know. I'm providing a balanced amount of new information, not too much, so they actually can access it. And then we're trying to create something new. Okay? Okay, so let's start with our connecting piece, because we're going to stay true to our structure today. So, our connecting, again, is connecting to what we already know, refining our mental model of teaching and learning. So there's a bit of talk time I'm going to give everybody, a few minutes, and I will time us, so I have a tendency to talk and talk and talk, so I'm going to try to put myself in check here. So a few questions, you can pick one of them. If you're feeling talkative, you can go through more than one. But think back to one moment in your life when you feel like you really learned something. This could be when you were a little toddler, to yesterday, to this morning, whatever works for you. What do you think it means to teach the whole child? So I'm trying to access your background knowledge. Maybe you already know. Maybe you already have an idea. In your opinion, what do you think effective teaching and learning looks like, feels like, and sounds like? Or describe the conditions necessary for deep learning. So there's lots of choice there. So I'm going to give everyone about 3 minutes to talk. Is that okay? So we can move to the person behind you, beside you. If you really feel like doing a bit of a walk, you can come up to talk to someone else. Okay? 3 minutes. Let's go. Just a 1 minute heads up. 1 more minute. seconds to wrap up your thought. Okay. Thank you, everyone. I'm just going to call out maybe one or two people if they want to share any thoughts that are kind of brewing for you, anything that's coming up for you about one or more of those questions. I did notice, so just to kind of put out there if we're still in a reflective phase, I'm noticing people were questioning what the word effective means. So that was really interesting, I noticed. I noticed people were talking a lot about emotional health. I kind of caught a few like eavesdropping. Yeah?
I would like to share the
Sure.
first question, and I will leave the other questions to other teachers. The first thing is the one moment in my life I think I feel like I really learned something. That is the moment when I'm able. Okay, so.
Alright, so at the moment I feel that I'm be able to teach others. Like if I learn some tricks or some some stuff in my life, then I would think if I be able to teach others about what I have learned, that's the moment I think I really learned something. Okay, thank you.
This is quite connected to one of my first points, so thank you for bringing that up. I'm just going to plant a seed right now. What I'm hearing is you're talking a little bit of what it means to be an educator and what it means to be a reflective educator. So let's talk about that in a moment. Okay, thank you. So again, I'm just going to connect a little bit more to my context because I did talk about Burn Creek, the school that I kind of belong to or work within. In 2012, we won this award at our school, and it was the Whole Child Award. And I have to be honest, I was teaching in that school for some time, and I didn't quite understand what they meant. What do you mean by whole child? I feel like I've been teaching because this is our population, but what does a whole child mean? So there's an organization called ASCD. They're quite Googleable, if that's a word. But they talk about a few kind of specific areas of what it means to educate the whole child. So first and foremost, they talk about health. So is a student physically, first of all, mentally, emotionally, socially healthy? It's quite, and I think that's already calling for a relational kind of approach to teaching. They then go on to say, okay, there's health, which is connected to safety. Is the student feeling safe? And sometimes it's not immediate danger, but it's kind of this feeling of I don't feel safe enough to put up my hand. For example, all of you don't know me that very well, so it's tough to kind of say, I know, here you go, I have a reflection. So that first day of class when no one wants to put their hand up, maybe it's a feeling of not feeling fully safe yet. Engaged. So a lot of time, I remember in the summer people were asking our teachers here, motivation. A lot of questions around motivation and engagement, and those two words can be interchanged a bit. Are they feeling supported? Supported enough to fail and ask questions and get stronger and teach others? And then finally, are they feeling challenged enough? Because sometimes there are students in class that know how to do all the right things, but they're not necessarily learning deeply, right? Okay, so that's kind of what ASCD meant, and once I saw those, I thought, okay, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense to the way that Burn Creek, the school I belong to, kind of is teaching. But I was still a bit more curious, so I asked a few teachers kind of a bit of a bigger question, and I want to put this question out to you all as well. What does it mean to educate the whole child, to make sure that the student is safe, healthy, supported, challenged, and engaged in our current world? And we talk a lot about this. Our current world is definitely changing, and our ever-globalized world is definitely changing. And sometimes we're questioning and re-questioning what it means to educate our children. a lot of time teachers are asking the question, am I doing the right thing? Are they ready? Are they ready for the world? And it's often a question that we're asking. So what are the concerns facing our current student populations? So I did ask a few people, what are the concerns? I want to maybe ask you first. What would you say, just to contain this, what do you think are the top, I'm going to say 1, 2, or 3. So up to you, however you're feeling. I'm trying to read the room. The top 1, 2, or 3 concerns or area of need for our current student populations. What would you say that those are? Okay, so just a quick fire round 2-minute conversation with the person behind you, beside you. And you can use this sentence frame. My students currently need, or my students currently struggle with. And you can just fill that sentence for me. Okay, thank you. And remember, this cannot, it doesn't just need to be academic, by the way. It could be any need, any need. Just a quick 10 seconds to wrap up. Okay, thank you everyone. And apologies for rushing the time. I think that was a fake 2 minutes. It wasn't really 2 minutes. Would anyone like to share? Maybe we can get 2 people to share? And no answer is a wrong answer because you are the teachers of your classroom, yes? So what do you think is a concern or a few concerns? Or struggles? Yes, yeah. Oh, thank you.
Hello everyone, when you sit next to Dana, you will be volunteer next time. Okay. Okay, I want to share my students currently need, I think all of us need a purpose. Okay, we need a purpose to do a thing. Our students need a purpose of why we have to study English, memorize vocabulary items just like us, why we have to join this meeting. And it's on Sunday morning, we should still sleep at home, right? But we are here, and so I think we need a purpose. Thank you.
Very important. One more person? Anyone else? Feeling a little more safe? Thank you.
So good morning. My student currently need to upload their e-portfolio for this semester. And the other one is my student currently struggle with learning English, especially applying the sentence pattern and get a little bit more acquainted with the grammar.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Application. Yeah, actual connected purpose, potentially. Yes. Okay. Thank you. All right, so I'll move this along because I can talk for 5 hours. Okay. So again, I want to ask some of my students. You know, and they're funny, so I feel like we can ask them. If you can't hear fully what they're saying, I ask them the same question. What do you think are the current needs? Teachers do a lot of talking about you, and sometimes we don't ask you. So just in case, these are some of the things that came up. Loneliness, connection, relationship, motivation, sparking curiosity and focus, student choice and teacher passion. But of course, their language is a lot more colorful than the language that I use. So let's see what they say here. So this is a quick one.
First and foremost, thank you both for agreeing to interview. My question is that what would you say are some of the biggest needs or concerns for students like yourself in high school that teachers or principals can help kind of support?
I prefer to say that kids making friends and such like that, like you connecting with somebody that can help you. You know, like loneliness is such a big thing out here that it just makes kids like a lot of depression. It just brings depression from such a young age, which nobody should have. And I say like teachers should just like communicate with their kids, should just start talking to them, asking them if they're good, all that, and connecting with the teacher, and maybe even the kids, and like the student can be good at the subject and all that, and just start doing good things.
What I noticed, teachers lack the ability to make the kids stay focused, and that's so huge because even though they don't realize it, so like they don't know if their kids are still focused. So it just starts getting like they talk and talk, but then for me, I'm just like just like staying there, like not understanding one thing. So one of my really good teachers is she knows her class, so like that's what teachers need. So she knows how long we can go with like paying attention, and then we need a quick 1 or 2 minute break. When we come back to it, it's like we just started the class. I think teachers need to start understanding the students more, knowing what they like, asking them questions about themselves, because people love talking about themselves, and it gives them a sense of connection and feeling a place where they belong, which is hard now because for kids, they don't even want to be at school. And it's even harder when they don't want to come here, and the teachers they don't even,
teachers are just like, they just keep talking and more.
They were very honest.
Deeper things going on in their life, and just like.
And it looks like they like, sometimes like, for me, like teachers don't like, it doesn't even look like they like their jobs anymore. Like, they need to take the time to, they need to also take the time, like, not everything they teach is what I want to learn. They need to take that time, because they're more, like, at the end of the day, our opinion is different, but they're setting the stage for us. We used to hear when I was younger, I want to be a teacher, I want to be a teacher. But like I barely hear that anymore because they're setting they're setting an example that is just not the one.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing.
So
I kind of went back and forth thinking, oh, I asked them to be honest, but man, were they honest. But then I thought, once I broke down what they were saying, it really did connect to that whole child piece that I was speaking to. And a lot of things that came up was that word connection. You know, the sense of loneliness which I was seeing, and I think they're just as confused potentially as some teachers of how do you teach in this current world? So I think when they're seeing teachers giving the same energy as a lack of passion, it might just be this really confusing state in education currently. And I think students are the first ones to read us, and that's what I thought this video was kind of sharing. We noticed that word relationship. You know, if I have a relationship with a teacher, and maybe I will be more focused. Motivation, sparking curiosity and focus. So he was very specific in saying breaks. You know, they know how much I need to work, they know when I need a break. But sometimes as teachers we have that tension of there's a lot to learn, we have to teach you these 5 things. So even though they're not really listening, at least it looks like listening. Student choice and teacher passion again. So things that are kind of, I think, a reflection of our current world. I also asked some teachers, and this is some from kind of our program from SFU, but also a few teachers throughout the Burnaby School District in British Columbia. So again, a lack of motivation was really up there, or maybe even just how do I spark motivation? I'm seeing a lot of heads nodding right now, yeah. Mental health or stress. It's almost like the undercurrent of everything. Smartphone use, so that was really specific of, do I let them use it, do I not? It's a big problem, but I want them to be strong with using a smartphone, so it's a big question. So that's really kind of specific. But I think underneath all of that is this critical thinking skills in listening, speaking, reading, and writing. Are they able to apply what they learn in English? Are they able to be critical? I know some of the presentations will talk about that today. Okay. So therefore, as I look at my time, after looking at all of that connecting piece, I figured to kind of thread together 5 different aspects. So educating the whole child in our current world requires, these are research-based kind of aspects as well, and as well as research from our students and our teachers. Number 1, building a relational foundation. Teacher and student connection as number 1 aspect. 2, developing a healthy self and healthy community. Sometimes teachers will share that they have classrooms that really work, and other classrooms where the community is just not connecting, and that shifts everything. Equitable opportunities, looking at equity, multiple and varied entry and exit points into our learning opportunities for our students. For me, as I shared kind of those statistics of Burn Creek, if a mainstream student and a student that has had an interrupted education for 5 years, I think you need to have multiple entry and exit points for them. For example, our language learners need multiple entry points and exit points into learning. Culturally responsive to current needs of what students value, as Mac and Trevor were talking in the video. They don't know, we don't want to learn the same thing as them sometimes, so culturally responsive. And then developing criticality and creativity. So students are walking into a world that is very complex, and they're being fed a lot of information. So are they actually able to criticalize information? Are they able to spark curiosity and creativity with it? So those are the top 5 kind of things that I'm going to quickly go through. Processing. So the first thing is building that relational foundation. Why? Teaching is the ability to build knowing through relationship, and how? Building a reflective disposition. So I'm going to go through this today. And we've talked about purpose. So this is again me building that into this presentation of why this. I think teaching is the ability to build knowing through relationship, as particular research shows us. Okay, so I liked this quote, but the big thing here is that the goal is concrete. The intention has been set. So we know that we need to teach sentence structure, right, for example. But if I don't stop and reflect, there is no point to it all. Teaching is reflective practice. Students will read you when there's no purpose. They're very good at that. So how do I do this? How am I a reflective being? How can I be a reflective educator? Or the word that we use is a disposition, just someone that's curious, someone that's asking questions, being curious about how you show up as an educator. So how can I actually do that? This is a few questions that I'm often asking myself, a question that I'll ask myself after this share today. How do my students perceive me? How am I being perceived? How do they see Meena in a classroom? Do my students feel safe, welcomed, supported, and challenged in my presence? Again, something I will be questioning myself when I leave with you all. How can I make my students feel safe, more welcomed, more supported, more challenged? Again, this is ongoing reflection as a teacher. This can look different. You might have term, semester, course, and evaluations. You may actually ask your students, how are things going? You don't have to put your name on it. Be honest. Teacher-student conferences. We did this at SFU, where we meet with each person and ask them, how are things going? How can we support you? Informal chats and check-ins, and that's really the big meat of it all. The informal chats and check-ins. Being curious about who all of you are. Right? Who are our students? So I'm going to skip this one for time, but just kind of thinking I will read out the question, however, for you all. What opportunities do you take to build reflection into your practices? And I think that's something I'm hoping we can all leave here and be questioning. Are you writing in a journal? Are you talking to a colleague? Do you have a support group around you? Because as teachers, we need that. Are you being a part of a learning group or cohort? Kind of like our SFU teachers have become a definite cohort. Are you taking additional courses? And it depends where you are in your life. If you're a new parent, if you're busy, if some other things are going on, you might be doing this a little differently. So there's no shame in here. You don't have to be doing all of them all of the time. But really what works for you in your current life and how it is. So just moving on, if we look at, okay, number one, help, I'm a reflective educator. I'm asking questions all the time about my own practice. The next thing is you're developing a healthy self and a healthy community. So why do we do this a little bit more? We learn in community, and we're deeply impacted by the dynamics in the room, right? We're in a classroom, which is by extension a community, and then by extension we're in a school, which is a larger community. So we're always in relationship. We're always kind of influenced by the dynamics. So sometimes, a class will work really well because the dynamics are naturally pretty great. However, a lot of times we have to work pretty explicitly to create those intentions. So it is also difficult to be open to a learning experience when you're physically, mentally, emotionally unregulated. So for example, when I walked into the room, there was a lot of nervous energy. And maybe if I'm bringing up the presentations, the nervous energy is about to return. But how can we create some regulation tools, whether it's kind of feet on the floor, a little bit of breathing, a little bit of connection time, whatever that might be. Okay. How do we do this? So intentionally building a learning community. Again, with the time, our whole presentation could be on this last part, but just noting today that how can I actually build a learning community and help students cultivate their own self-regulation skills. So when Dana's feeling tired, she already knows what she needs to do because we've built those skills. Okay? Sorry, Dana. So how does this look like? There's some classroom examples I can show you here today. Creating a community where students know and respect each other and can help maintain a focus on learning. So that focus word comes up quite a bit. We do this by knowing our students, from names to interests to strengths and areas of needed improvement. I usually spent about 2 weeks doing this with my students, building community, and I still do some language kind of acquisition through it too. Creating an intentional learning space. So look at your physical space. Can you shift it to make it more welcoming? As well as developing the flow through how a lesson is delivered. So if you're noticing, that relationship word is very important. So here's some classroom agreements. Attentive listening, appreciation, no put downs, the right to participate and the right to pass. So sometimes you're like, I'm having an off day, Miss Mangat. I'm not gonna talk today. As long as that's a perfect time that I know that I have to do a check-in with that student. What's going on? Mutual respect and make an effort to succeed. So we usually break down what that actually means. We don't just write it on the wall and ignore it. We're always talking about this. Guess who? So building curiosity and passion. Knowing our students, so we usually kind of don't write student names down, but we guess who of what their strengths and areas of improvement are, or what their interests are. This is all over the room, so physical space. Right? Students kind of get curious about each other. So these are kind of some surveys here, some personality surveys all about us. So if I have a classroom full of, so if you can't probably see it there, but it's controller, organizer, analyzer, and persuader. If I know I have a classroom full of controllers, that might impact my dynamics, and I may need to kind of help them become a little bit more of analyzers and observers. If I have a classroom full of analyzers, then I may need to shift that and build some leadership skills. So there's quite a few kind of personality and group dynamic quizzes you can do and find online. But this one I usually, so this class, for example, had a lot of persuaders. So I had to be very careful about how are you persuading? What does it look like to be critical? How can you be a critical persuader? Instead of just, I need to go get ice cream because I love ice cream. Let's talk about that. So we are talented in many ways, always starting from a strength. Especially in a language classroom, everyone, your students kind of already feel a bit insecure. They're learning a new language. They're feeling like their accent is in the way, and we have to kind of decode all of that and say that's actually a strength. We look at, what we are talented in many ways. So speaking more than one language, that's a talent. So we start from strength. So just a few classroom examples you can look at. Again, we go a little bit more in detail after, but just a little taste. So, we do this by, oh wow, okay. We do this by creating an intentional learning space. So like I said, we can do check-ins, we can scan students' physical, social, and emotional health. What are you noticing about how a student's dressing, their hygiene, how they're looking? Are they coming into a classroom with a hat on and looking like they want to hide all the time? Just kind of noticing. Timing, pace, structure, content and language objectives. Do students know when they come into a room that this is what I'm learning and this is why I'm learning it? So they're constantly in control. Okay, I'm going to skip this, but I'll write the question out. How have you, or how have, or can, you build a learning environment that makes students feel safe, connected, and ready to engage in a learning experience? It's different for everyone. Okay, this one I'm just going to overview quickly here, the equitable opportunities for all. This is when we're really looking at policy and structure, I think, but you can also be looking at how your practices within the classroom, if they're equitable or not. Why? Education holds the power to liberate or oppress. Frere. You know, it's either it can make people more free, it can be a place of healing, or it can further sideline people and further oppress them into specific boxes. So how? Policies and practices that promote multiple and varied entry and exit points into learning opportunities. Not everybody thinks the same way, so we're allowing different thinking styles to enter a room. Not everyone writes the same way. Even though there's a standard way, we could say, are there multiple entry points for them to understand the learning? So just a quick touch on that. I do like this kind of poster. It tends to be a bit popular, but I enjoy the justice one at the end here. So equality, we think, nope, everyone in this classroom is equal. Everyone's gonna get 50 minutes to write the test, 5-0, because we're all equal, everybody. Okay, well, let's look at that picture. Depends what you're coming into the classroom with, because that equal looks different for everybody. So we see that visual there. Equity, everyone gets the supports they need. So John, our student, may need a little bit more students than Amy, our student. But they get, whatever support John needs, that he can get extra supports. Whatever Amy needs, maybe she's ready to learn. That's equity. And we really want to look at equity-based practices. So again, can't really get to equity if you don't know your students. The goal, justice. All three can see the game without supports and accommodations because the causes of the inequity were addressed. And that's when I look at policy, right? We need to be shifting that as well. Okay? Just make sure maybe people can access this presentation later, and I'll have some visuals up here, but it goes through kind of the steps of equity and into education. I want to take a quick note on this because it's really important to me to share this with you all about teaching linguistic equality or equity, I would say. You want to make sure your classroom is a safe place where students are comfortable in speaking about their thoughts. This number 2 is really important. Prevent linguistic bullying by focusing on content of speech. So what the student is saying, not how they are saying it. Sometimes I notice in my classroom students tend to make fun of each other because of accents. We put a stop to that and we're critical about that. That why are you kind of feeling that? I do a lot of storytelling around that. And I want to place my students in a place of power. So I'm often asking that last question, how do you say hello in your language? It's not just the standard English that we're all glorifying here. Okay? And English is standard because of when we look at colonization, we look at dominant culture, those are all things you can bring into a language culture. And I think it really does spark passion and focus and purpose. Okay, sorry. And culturally responsive to current needs of what students value. So this is what Matt was talking about, potentially addresses concerns around student motivation because I'm looking at what do my students really enjoy? What are their interests? If I know my classroom and there's students that really enjoy
music and hip hop, then I might be bringing in a little bit more text around that. So really look at who are my students, what languages do they speak, what social locations are they from? How can I be responsive to that? So it's not just bringing different texts into the classroom that are popular or youth culture, but really specifically looking at how can I respond to who you are and where you are at with your learning. Okay? So this might seem kind of crazy, but I usually don't fully prepare my lessons until I meet my students. I know there's standard skills they need to learn, but I don't really do my lesson planning until I meet them. And I tell them that, so they're very patient with me. Okay, a few cultural, I'll read a few of these, but I like this one here. Invite English language learners to use their home languages. Invite them. It's a great scaffolding tool. Read books with characters who share language experiences. That may depend on the texts that are available to you. Use English language learners' experience to activate prior knowledge. How do you say this in your language? Okay, going. A quick one here. Just some do's and don'ts for cultural responsive classroom teaching. And I think if you can access this later, you'll have some time to actually read with it. But I'll read one. Do recognize that all experiences are valid. So if someone says, well, in my country, this is what we do, I'm not going to say, well, we don't do that here. Believe me, I hear that a lot. Instead, don't tell someone what they felt or experienced. Don't tell someone what they felt or what they've experienced. Encourage students to speak for themselves. So safety goes back to that whole child. Okay. And lastly, developing criticality and creativity. Okay. In our current world, students are able to access at a rapid and often unmonitored rate. This is really important. They can go on Google, they can go online, and they can access a lot of information. But the thing is, it's not necessarily monitored. So it can be seen as our responsibility, with one of the kind of things that our current world is calling for, to develop critical and creative thinking skills in youth, so they feel empowered to decipher their ever-complex world. This is kind of explicit instruction, teaching them how do you think as a critical thinker, putting that together. Sometimes we assume our students can do that. Gradual release, that means I'm going to model it as a teacher. This is what critical thinking looks like. Now you try as a group of 3, then you try as a group of 2, and then you try by yourself. Slowly releasing. It's kind of like riding a bike or swimming. We don't throw our students into the pool and say, swim. We give them some life jackets, we give them some training, some modeling. I think this is important to quickly go through. Education must enable one to sift and weigh evidence, to discern the true from the false, the real from the unreal, and the facts from the fiction. The function of education, therefore, is to teach one to think intensively and to think critically. Again, this attaches to all of the whole child kind of aspects that we talked about, to be engaged, to be critical, to be equitable, to teach our students that. Our inquiry project process, which I'm going to leave because a few of our educators here are going to touch on what this means, but just keep that in mind, the inquiry process with criticality, and you'll see that today in some presentations. The 5-question response. Is anyone using the 5-question response today in their presentations? Oh, perfect. So look at that word, 5-question response. Another specific way to teach criticality, and our wonderful educators will be showing that today. Evaluation and assessment. Critical thinking is so tied to the way that we evaluate. So if we're still kind of giving A's and B's for memorization, but we're asking our students to be critical, something doesn't match up. So again, that number one thing of asking questions about yourself, how am I educating? It goes back to that. Self and peer assessment, kind of that gradual release model, which I'll show you a picture of. Is anyone sharing the gradual release model today? No? Okay, so maybe you want to take a picture of the slide, but kind of of what I said, right? So I teach you, I model things, and then you do it in a small group. Then maybe you move to a partner, and then you do it by yourself. So if I'm teaching my students how to write a paragraph, I'm not just writing it on the board and saying, go, write a paragraph. First I teach them, they do it as a group of 3, they do it as a group of 2, and then they do it as a group, as an individual. Gradual release. Sorry. But there we go, if we're transforming, you know, I'm just going to finish with this one question. There's your 5 aspects. Now maybe you can go back to, we can read this together. What can you read that? What can you or commit to? And maybe something to think about during the break, but if we go through all of those aspects, just one thing that you can sprinkle into your practice, whether it's looking at your relationships with your students, with yourself as an educator, developing healthy self and healthy community, whether it's providing equitable opportunities, looking at that visual, you know, everyone has boxes to stand on. Culturally responsive, do my students want to learn what I'm teaching them? Or can I ask them more? And then developing criticality and creativity, are we doing too much memorization and not enough criticality? So look at the balance in your classroom. So something to kind of think what you'd commit to. So remember, and I think this is important, we don't have to do it on Twitter, by the way, but if you'd like, you're welcome to ask me some more questions, and then maybe take some time to go through the presentation yourself. But thank you for bearing with me. That was a lot of information. I appreciate you all. Thank you.